Hello there, you're very welcome to a special preview show as we look ahead at the 2020 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship Final. I'm delighted to say Alan Brogan and Joe Brolly are alongside me in what has been such a unique year. Knockout football played in the winter, but when it's all said and done, we're left with a very familiar rivalry.
And the more things change, the more they stay the same. It will be another Mayo-Dublin All-Ireland final for a fourth time in 8 seasons.
The battle for Sam Maguire concludes here. That's the expectation. Mayo obsessed with ending 6 barren decades. Goal! Another one for Dublin and another one for Brogan. And it's Connolly. It's in the 42nd minute against Clark. And he scores. That's how to take a penalty. Cool as you like. It'll be heartbreak for Mayo. 6 minutes into stoppage time. 40 metres out. Rock kicking up into the air and over the bar. And Dublin have won the All-Ireland. Champions once again. Sam Maguire staying in the capital, and Mayo once again fall at the final hurdle.
Yes, it's the 4th championship final meeting between these sides in the last 8 seasons. Their 9th meeting in total across championship in the last 9 seasons as well. Gentlemen, pleasure as always to chat to you both. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of Dublin versus Mayo in this final, Alan, if I come to you first, as I mentioned there at the start, 2020, year like no other, a very unique football championship. What have you made of it all?
Yeah, look, first of all, it's been great to have a championship, isn't it? And I suppose, like, the knockout football, we thought at the start, is this an opportunity maybe for Dublin to be toppled? We won't have the Super 8s, which usually benefits the strong teams. I suppose we've seen the likes of Tipperary and kind of Cavan come through, and that bit of romanticism there. But look, I suppose we're left with maybe outside of Kerry what we would have expected at the start of the year, and like as you said, it's a familiar rivalry, albeit in the last few years a bit of a one-sided one. But Dublin and Mayo again, and look, it's great to be sitting here looking into an All-Ireland final a week before Christmas, and it'll give us all something to focus on at the weekend, and I think everyone's happy just to have a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Joe, what have your highlights been?
Pandemics may come and go, Dublin endure. And, I was worried last week watching the Limerick game, the All-Ireland hurling final, you know, and how oppressive and dominant Limerick's performance was, and in the end how dull, you know, watching it. It's been, I don't think I've ever seen a hurling final that was so dull and that eventually you just switched off from. You know, you've got Limerick's systematic play, their power, the ingenious strategy that they employ. You know, they don't commit forwards. I mean, Dublin score more goals than Limerick. And I was thinking about it that, you know, you've got to. I mean, obviously Limerick have a bit to go before they can equal Dublin's dominance. But with Dublin's dominance, there's always something to savour. And truly, over the last decade, their finals, apart from the facile victory over Tyrone, there was brilliance there as well because of that 7-minute spell once Tyrone had gone 5-1 up. I mean, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got this perfect football for 8 minutes, where all of a sudden Dublin are 2 up and the game's over. But the rivalries that they've had with Kerry and Mayo over the last decade, you know, I don't think they've ever really been matched in Gaelic football. And the number of times we've stood out there with our hearts pumping, you're like, oh my God. I mean, I'm a dairy man. At the end of the games, you're exhausted. And I mean, it's just a pity we're not going to have a full house on Sunday. Yeah. But the worry would be with Dublin's continuous improvement since 2013, you know, and I think a dramatic improvement since 2016, that they could, I mean, Mayo played very well last year and lost by 10 points. And you came away afterwards thinking, you know, I think that playing against them now, you must come away from games. The Mayo boys must have come away, you know, questioning their existence. Like,
what do we need to do here?
What is? I mean, you could see the Cavan faces at the end of the game. You know, anyone who's playing against Dublin now, they come away thinking, you know, what is this? And yet, we go back 12 months and we have 2 epic games between Kerry and Dublin. and you could scarcely get more entertaining All-Ireland finals.
Yeah, I think the Dublin Mayo rivalry in particular, I know you mentioned Kerry, and there has been a few games with Kerry, but the Dublin Mayo rivalry for me in the last few years that I played, I think the few years since then, that's the one that's Dublin haven't, bar maybe last year, but they haven't really managed to shake off Mayo, and there's still a bit, no, you mightn't agree, Joe, but there's still a bit of a narrative out there that Mayo are the one team that can really beat, that maybe could beat this Dublin team because of the aggressive way they set up, because of the way they take risks and stuff.
Well, that's correct. They're the only team that actually take Dublin on and say, look, let's see what you're made of. And
can they beat them though? Like, to put it too simply, can Mayo beat Dublin?
I don't think that it's possible now. You know, to beat Dublin, you know, you must go and beat them. And I just want to pick up on a point you were making. It is correct that there were two rivalries really, Kerry and Dublin and Mayo, Dublin, and yet, you'd have to say that you never really felt at any stage in those epic games and draws and replays, the 2015 semi-final, the 2016 final, 2017, you never thought that Mayo were going to win it. You never felt absolutely convinced about it. Whereas in the drawn game last year, when Spillane came on, they got the goal, all of a sudden they were 3 up, you felt
you're worried,
these guys can beat them. And I think that's because there's a well of confidence with Kerry. You know, they have an All-Ireland Championship in 2014. It's a tradition that's handed down from father to son. They have a tradition of winning, you know. And I was thinking about this during the week. If things get tight in a big game, you need to have something that you can delve into, you know, to keep you going, to keep you composed, to keep you clear-sighted. I mean, Dublin's bank of mental experiences is vast now. You know, the pressure is, can they win 2 in a row? They win 2 in a row. Can they win 3 in a row? They win 3 in a row. Can they win 4? They win 4. And then the huge pressure of last year. Because regardless of what anyone says, you know, you can insulate yourself and you can play ruthlessly and you can immerse yourself the way Dublin did. But still you felt last year that there was pressure. You could feel it in the ground, this idea of immortality, all the sort of romance of it bore down on top of them. And they came through that 6 in a row. Nobody really cares about 6 in a row. And so what do Mayo delve into when it comes to the crunch? You know, and it's starting with the Donegal defeat in 2012, which was really a crushing defeat. The game was over in 10 minutes. What do they delve into? You know, when it comes to the crunch, and now here we are. We saw this 2 years ago. They're 2 points up in the 65th minute. They go 2 points up. And that was it. You never felt. Cluxton sets the ball down. Dublin go to work. Dublin beat them.
But that's a feeling that as a sports person or as a footballer, hurler, that only you can feel. And I went through it in the early part of my career when we got so close. You get within 10 minutes of winning the game, and then when the game's there to be won, as you said, you couldn't go there because you had nothing to call upon. And we'll never know, but deep down in the psyche of the Mayo guys that have been there, Aidan O'Shea and Killian O'Connor, great footballers of course, but deep down in their psyche, do they have that self-belief that in the last 3 or 4 minutes, if this game gets to the melting pot, can they beat this Dublin team? Whereas, like you talk about systematic, when Dublin get to that stage, like they won't play off emotion. They won't get to that stage with Dublin. They'll just keep doing what they're doing. You know, we talk about a process, but that's the way it works. They just keep doing what they're doing, and eventually that grinds out the result for them because of the player they have. And as you say, Joe, they just don't make mistakes.
Let me ask you about that. See, my experience in football was very different. I mean, I led a charmed life as a footballer because I came through, we were winning under 14s, under 16s, minors, the club, you know, then into the Derry senior team, Henry Downey, all these guys who had won All-Ireland club titles and Hogan Cups and, you know, Sigerson Cups. And, I mean, very quickly we were the All-Ireland champions. I had 2 or 3 national leagues and an All-Ireland by the time I was 22. And so I didn't have that experience, but something that interested me there, you said, because you were in a Dublin team that was just like, people were mad to get at them. They were just beating and beating and beating, and they were coming out in big days and maybe collapsing and being beaten by 15 points, and people saying, look at the talent that's available to them. And those losing experiences were very ingrained, so it must have been mentally for you. How did that switch? What was it that...
Well, that was the strength of Pat Gilroy. Like, that was the real thing he brought to the team, maybe that Pillar Caffrey didn't. That that kind of bit of self-belief. And look, you can do all the psychology. Someday maybe you just need a little bit of luck to get it across the line. And maybe in 2011 we got that little bit of luck.
We interception.
We loads of talent. We got a little interception. Stephen kicks an outrageous free under all the pressure in the world, and you just and then it's the monkey off the back. Then all of a sudden you can start playing without that pressure on you. And you have that well to go to where, we've been in this position before and we've come through it, we can do it again. And
was that difficult for you though? Like, I know you can only speak on behalf of yourself, but getting that inner belief and getting that self-belief, was it difficult for you to get yourself up to that level?
Like, it's crucial if you want to win on Ireland. Especially if you want to win multiple Irelands, you have to have that, because there's going to come stages in game where you're going to be under real pressure. Your backs are going to be against the wall, and if you don't have 10 or 12 leaders in that team to dig you out. Like, you look at the Dublin team now and there's just leaders all over the place.
Yeah, but you had what I would call a fairly normal development then, because 2012 you lose to Mayo, and
that was just because we hadn't got over 2011 yet. That's what I put it down to.
Yeah, but I can understand that entirely. I can understand that entirely. Then 2013 you grind it out in the final. You have a difficult first 20 minutes. Then I thought it was a very dominant win, really. Once you got the two, I thought very, very easy goals. But then 2014, that was the moment, because Donegal, it was the perfect ambush. They had been rampant champions in 2012. They came to the game mentally. They had that locker to delve into. Look, Jimmy McGuinness has told us that this is how it will be. We've been rehearsing for this for 9 months. These guys are disrespecting this system, and they think they can beat us, just play a man-to-man football. And they played with relish and confidence, and they had probably 2 Hall of Fame forwards in Murphy and McFadden, and leaders all over the field. That's what they had to delve into. They scored 3 goals that day, and they still only beat Dublin by 3 points.
Yeah.
So you look at how Dublin have improved since then. You go to 2015, and this quiet excellence that you see all the time, Conor O'Callaghan, Kieran Kilkenny, Mannion, they just don't make mistakes. I mean, I marvelled at their Leinster Championship campaign this year. I mean, I know it was Westmeath and it was, Meath and Laois, but they could easily, I saw Armagh in McHale Park last year in front of a huge vocal Mayo home crowd. Armagh threw the game away. They intercepted a kick out. They had a great chance to score a goal to win the game, and they blew it. I think they lost by a point or 2. I saw Derry bringing Mayo to extra time in McHale Park in the qualifiers the year before that. These are teams that Dublin nowadays will just destroy mercilessly. As though they were playing Kerry or Mayo. They treated Laois, I thought, like, I watched the game twice. I just marvelled at the minute by minute excellence and high standards, and nobody deviating from that. And I think that probably since you left, I'm not saying it's as a result of that, but probably since you left, there's now they've gone to a higher plane. Like, the best way that I could think of was Richie McCaw's All Blacks, that 5-year, 6-year team that weren't really defeated, that won 2 World Cups, and regardless of who they were playing, they were able to concentrate for 90 minutes and concentrate ferociously and execute and execute and execute. And I always thought about those stories about Richie McCaw turning up an hour before training just to throw passes. Just spent an hour throwing passes, and you watch Dean Rock taking frees, and I think you've got the clip where I think the score was 3-19 to 6 or 7 points against Meath. Dean gets a free in the 68th minute, 25 metres out on the right hand side, but it's a handy free for him. He goes through his routine and he kicks it wide, and his reaction, it's not like game's over, lads, bit of a giggle, as the old Dublin team might have done.
Yeah.
It was like, and you could see him, his whole body tensing, and you could see him chastising himself. And 5 minutes later, at the final whistle, he's still doing it. What's he saying to himself? Let my concentration wander. That will not happen again. That is my responsibility, and I will accept that responsibility, And you saw how he played then in the semi-final against Cavan. I mean, it was a flawless performance.
Yeah, I think it has become a hallmark of the team. That keeping the standards up here, no matter what stage of the match, no matter what score a game is. And that would worry me slightly about Mayo, watching them against, look, it was an awesome display going forward in the All-Ireland semi-final. against Tipperary, but to let in 3 goals in a game like that when they really should be at the pitch of the game would worry me slightly for Mayo coming into a game like this. That would never happen with Dublin when they got 5 goals to concede 3 at the other end, just like that.
Well, we haven't conceded a goal.
And if it did, as you say, there would be blue murder because that's just letting the standards
More
drop.
worrying surely was the 3 goal chances in the first 10 minutes. Tipperary scored 1, but actually the one they scored wasn't as good a chance as the other 2. And, you know...
That could have changed the whole complexion.
You see, the thing about Dublin that I think now about them is I do think that I mean, obviously it's difficult to transplant teams across the generations, but the best football team I've ever seen, you know. And I mean, any serious student of the game has to be a student of Dublin. But the best football team I've ever seen, and I think that that's because the balance of the system. No one else defends and attacks with such excellence, you know. No one else has a system where the players are able to carry out that system, you know, virtually to perfection. So another team might say, right, I'll give you a good example. The day that Kerry played Mayo in the All-Ireland semi-final and Donaghy was going to full forward and he'd destroyed them in the past and they put big Aidan O'Shea in. Because it's like, we better put Aidan O'Shea in, you know. So they had to transplant this guy who'd never played full-back in his life. And actually he did very well, as it turned out. I mean, the Dubs don't have to do that. They don't have to say, look, we need a long ball threat. Con O'Callaghan will outcatch, you know, a 6'3" midfielder. Kieran Kilkenny's brilliant in the air. Dean Rock's brilliant in the air. They don't ever have to rob Peter to pay Paul. Their defenders are all flying machines, you know, and they all tackle with great discipline. And they you know, like Limerick's understanding of what they're doing, which means that they're very, very relaxed. Dublin have faced almost every challenge now, and they know that this game plan is multi-purpose. I mean, and I do think that it's honed now to an extent that we've never seen a team playing like this before. I mean, you make one mistake against them. Yeah, and the one jarring thing in the semi-final was the 3 goals that they missed. You know, Scully's selfishness, taking a whack at it whenever Robbie McDade's at the far post.
And that's thing, it actually sticks out when a Dublin player
what the hell,
shows a bit of selfishness. And if you watch Cormac Costello came on against me, he got a red card in the end, but he got 3 possessions before that. I think he was blocked down once, he kicked it wide. And when a player, and that's Cormac coming on, just trying to make an impact to try and get himself up the pecking order. Like, and at the start of the year, I was thinking, Dean Rock, right, he's whatever age Dean is. Cormac's coming in. He came in, I think, in the first or second game. He kicked 3 or 4 frees. Are we seeing a little change in the guard here? Maybe Cormac's ready to take that.
He kicked 7 points in 15 minutes with both feet and frees.
Yeah, he had a huge performance in the first or second.
It's ridiculous.
So he was. So are we seeing a change in the guard? Is Dean ready to start stepping away? And is it Cormac's time? But then you just see Dean come out in the last couple of games. He's just,
so the other thing I always think about them, but also is when you meet them, they're all so big. I mean, you know, unless someone has stood beside Dean Rock, you might not get an impression of how big and powerful he is. And I have a habit, you know, I can't remember where I think it was the Palace Bar after they'd beaten Tyrone. Everybody was celebrating that, obviously. all right thinking people were celebrating that. But I just give him a wee across there, and I mean, honestly, it was like hitting mahogany. And you see that in their 50-50 exchanges. I mean, Cavan hurled themselves at them ferociously. They were just bouncing off them. At one stage, James McCarthy could hit right down the middle, a really dirty slap. The Cavan man just boom, hit him right down the middle. Do you remember that? Yeah, right at the end of the game? And James was like,
he loves it.
It's a tough Ballymun warrior.
Well, there we go, you know.
And just are able to brush it off.
Pat Gilroy said that he took the Dublin hurlers down one time. Once he took them, he was shocked at the weight training they were doing, you see. He thought, Jesus. So he brought them down, he rang down, and James McCarthy was over in Parnell Park doing his own weight session. He says, I'll bring them over. He says, right, lads, in the cars, brought them in to watch James McCarthy. McCarthy over said, Pat, how's it going, you know? He says the Dublin hurlers were just like,
in awe
of the work that they were doing, but you can clearly see they're doing
so
very specialised work.
To be fair, though, this Mayo team, I think Thomas Galligan said that in an interview with the GAA that conditioning-wise, you can match Dublin, or they think you can match Dublin. And this Mayo team, then, I mean, James Horan's tried out 51 players since he's came back in. There's 13 new faces. There's a freshness to it, and he's mentioned that.
A very good team, lovely Gaelic football team, very entertaining.
There is this, I suppose, the players that don't have that experience maybe come with it, a bit of fearlessness, and they'll want to challenge him, and they will be conditioned enough, surely. We've seen Cillian O'Connor's in, you know, the best form that he's been in quite some time.
He scored 4-7 against Tipperary.
I don't think
I don't buy that. I have to say I don't buy it. I don't think Killian's got the pace. I think he's a very good free taker. You know, I think that against Dublin he has struggled always. There's no reason to suspect that it'll be any different. Aidan O'Shea's playing full forward. Like, another team might say, well, we better devote some resources to that. Dublin will not. You know, Aidan O'Shea, he's never made an impact against us.
I think Cillian
O'Connor concerned about that.
But will this not be the case that Aidan O'Shea will play in midfield and that they'll stick with Cillian O'Connor, Tommy Conroy in the full forward line? No full forward as such.
But Aidan doesn't have the legs to stay with McCarthy or Fenton. I mean, they're both racehorses, and this is the point that I come back to, that other teams have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So Kerry, for example, felt against Cork, we better block up the middle. So what we'll do is we'll only pick 3 forwards in the forward line, and we'll bring 3 defenders back to block up that central area to prevent Cork running through us as they did last year.
Yeah.
You know, Dublin don't have to do that. Everybody does their job. You know, they defend brilliantly, you know, in numbers, even though they're man-to-man. They know to drop off. They've worked it out to a T now. Let's say Mayo get an early goal. Will that demoralise Dublin?
Yeah, not at all.
No.
What Cluxton will set the ball down as though nothing has happened at all.
Yeah, no, we just be calm.
I don't think it's I don't think this game is going to rest on Aidan O'Shea and Cillian O'Connor. Like, we kind of know what you're going to get from both of those guys. Like, they're fantastic footballers. Cillian's a great finisher. He may lack a bit of pace. He'll clip a few scores, but I think it's the likes of Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, Conor Loftus, the new guys. Like, they're the guys that are going to have to bring the legs and the pace to try and compete with Dublin. And if they don't get it out of their 4 or 5, Owen McLaughlin at a wing back to like him, if they don't get a big day out of those 4 or 5 new guys, I think it's going to be a very difficult day for Mayo. I think they're the guys that are going to have to make the difference for them.
Tommy Goals is terrific. That's the Goldman Mayo, and he's
you might need a few at the weekend.
Yeah, but how many do you need?
Yeah,
and you know, like, Aidan has played since what is he? It's 4 All-Irelands. Since 2012 was his first All-Ireland, and he's made no impact in any final. You know, you know, in finals particularly, the pace of the game ups. You know that the pace of the game ups, everything gets quicker. Everything. I mean, I saw Aidan in the Mayo County final this year. I mean, he's a marvellous specimen. And David McHale from Knockmore was marking him. David's 5'9". Aidan started at full forward. The first ball that came in, McHale out-muscled him, flying out, 1-2, lays it off. Aidan then eventually drifts out the field, gets the ball in areas of no importance. You know, Aidan is terrific if you're playing against lesser teams, but against teams like this, against a team like Dublin, I come back to the point, where do Mayo win this from? You're right about McLaughlin, he's a terrific wing back, and you know, this young fellow Mullen in the full back line's made of the right stuff. O'Hora from Ballinas's made of the right stuff. I mean, he's a cage fighter, and you need that sort of grit. And Keegan in the full back line is out of position now because they feel they need some meanness in there. He hasn't got the engine that he used to have, but it's a different world. So I come back to the point again. What do they have to do to deter Dublin? And how are they going to do that?
Well, they're going to have to compete on Stephen Clux's kickouts. That's
we say that every match.
Yeah, but someone's going to have to do it, and he's going to need to be aggressive. He needs to shore up. He needs to shore up the back line. They can't leave open space like they did the last day. But like, come back to Aidan O'Shea.
But how do they achieve those 2 goals then? So you see, here's what James Horan's thinking now. Okay, you're right. We push up on Stephen Cluxton's kickouts. Now, Kerry did that to great effect in the first 15 minutes of the drawn final last year, and then Cluxton kicked one over the top. Dean Rock catches it, lays it off. McCaffrey goes through, puts it in the net. So they can go long over the top. There's no issue there. And they've got the players. So, for example, if you're struggling, if Stephen Cluxton's looking up and he's struggling to see someone actually getting free, he can pop it on top of James McCarthy or Brian Howard or Kieran Kilkenny, and they'll win their own ball anyway.
Yeah, but that's as a Mayo manager, that's where preparing for every eventuality comes in. And like, they need to look at that. If we stop them short, he's going to go long. So then we need to be prepared for that. And we know Stephen can switch it like that, and Dublin can switch from a short kick out to a long kick out and score a goal in the space of 15
they're better
seconds.
To stick with. I think they're better to stick with what they do. Mayo are better to stick with what they do.
But
if you want to have any chance, you know, but you've got to not be caught up with this opposition, because I mean, I always laugh, you know, and it was one of the funniest things. It was unwittingly funny. But Jimmy McGuinness, who I have, you know, when you say this, people think you're about to cut the legs off him, but I have the greatest admiration for Jimmy and huge admiration for what he managed to achieve with that bunch of misfits. Like, I mean,
I feel there's a but here.
It's one of the great achievements. But a couple of years ago in the column that Keith Duggan goes from in the Irish Times, which is always very entertaining, the headline was the 5 simultaneous game plans required to beat Dublin. I mean, 5 simultaneous. We've had a pandemic. The boys only went back training 2 months ago.
They need 5 game plans.
5 simultaneous game plans.
but that's what it may come down to, and that's the level of detail it really goes. And they need to be so switched on, and that's what I'm talking about, the concentration to leak 3 goals against Tipperary. That would worry me, and if that's not sorted out ahead of next weekend, I think it's going to be a long day.
Isn't that why James came back, you know, for a second spell to say, I will deliver in All-Ireland, Sam Maguire will come to Mayo?
I think the team has come down from their heights. They went to their heights with Rochford. They were very, very close. And I genuinely felt in 2016, I really thought in 2016 that Dublin were still vulnerable and that Mayo would beat them. You know, and I said that day. And they didn't. I think that was the day they drew, then they lost the replay.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the high point. 2017, I thought they were excellent again. You know, they were really, really, really right there for it with Rochford. Rochford had come from Corofin, as you know. He released the team to really play, and I thought strategically they were at their best in Rochford's years. I think now that it's sort of back to the old Mayo boom and bust. Galway could easily have beaten them in the Connacht final. I thought they were atrocious in the Connacht final. You know, they laboured against Roscommon. These are teams that Dublin would annihilate. I think that your point was a very good one. Up until last year, we were always saying, why have Dublin never annihilated Mayo? Why is it that Mayo are thereabouts? Well, last year, I thought the second half was ruthless and very dispiriting for Mayo footballers. They must have come away from that thinking, we're getting further away from this, not closer to it. And you would be concerned that mentally they're not in half as good a position as they were a couple of years ago, where they really felt. Well, I don't think they actually believe they can win this.
But is it unfair to say Mayo are mentally weak? Is it not a case of
no, they are mentally weak,
but they're just not as mentally strong as Dublin, who you look across all sport in Ireland. No, but Joe, you look
seriously,
across all sport
they've
in
been in
Ireland.
9 All-Ireland semi-finals since 2011, and they've not won an All-Ireland. I mean, come on, seriously.
But they're coming up against this team that is so dominant.
You know,
this
they
Dublin
helped.
team.
They also assisted in creating that dominance. They had their opportunities to beat these guys. I mean, in 2013, after the first 15 minutes, you would have said to yourself, "Okay, these guys are there now. They're in the right place to win this game." I think Mayo had gone 4 points up. The game was very tight. That Dublin team was still a bit all over the place. It wasn't the Dublin team that it is now, you know. And yet Dublin just gloved them as the game went on. Bernard got two very easy goals. One popped up in there, he flicked it into the net. The other, a hand pass from Dennis Bastic to the far post. And again, it was a tame surrender, you know. So you can't. I've got to disagree with you. I think that mentally they're weak, and I think that their whole bank of experiences now is, oh, Jesus, here we go again. Oh, fuck, here we go again. So what happens? What happens if 10 minutes into this game, Dublin break down a David Clark free kick out? And David's kick outs, for the first time this year I've seen them, they're precarious. Yeah. You know, he's been given opportunities. And that's not good for a goalie's confidence, especially a goalie like him, a veteran coming to the end of his career. You would expect him to be at the height of his confidence. But what if after 10 minutes Dublin break down a kick out and the ball's in the net? And the Dubs are back in their position, ready to break down the next one.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt.
Mentally, where does that leave the game?
But does that not come back to my point of that he's given 13 debutants? It's a new team. He's referenced that in his media comments this week, that it's a whole different panel, it's a whole different setup, it's a whole different belief system. And actually, one of the quotes that he mentioned, you see a lot of teams play it safe and don't take risks. I don't know if they have a chance winning with that mindset. Yeah. So is that not alluding to that we're going to take risks and we're going to have a go?
It's a great mindset, and it pervades Mayo football. Their county championship this year, a lot of which was shown on telly, was tremendously entertaining. And it is a facet of Mayo football that you back yourself and you play the game. And it's no coincidence that they're the team that have been closest to Dublin, because Dublin actually let you play. You know, these teams who drop back into the defence, well, Dublin are just going to pick them off and destroy them. You know, and then you have no prospect of playing the game or playing it with any enjoyment or sense of adventure. But I think it's very difficult to see how over the space of an 80-minute game that Mayo can win this.
Yeah,
you know.
like it is difficult. And any analyst looking at that game worth of salt is going to... That's what we're going to come up with. But, like, I just think you can never... Like, you can't write off Mayo. Like, they have showed, even with all those games, they've still showed tremendous will, tremendous desire to come back. And are they good enough to beat Dublin? Well, then maybe not. But he's gone with a bit of youth, as you said. Like he's moved on guys who he would have been very close to, the likes of Keith Higgins, who was a great footballer, Colin Boyle, who was a great footballer, but Donny Vaughan,
Tom Parsons,
maybe all on the bench.
well.
But those guys,
I don't know. I
now-
think that's a retrograde step. I mean, I was really surprised to see Tom Parsons being brought in the semi-final. You know, it looked like sort of an old pals act to me. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no place for that in Dublin. Like, you know, I mean,
No.
go. That's it. You're done. Thanks.
When you're done. Yeah.
We
Thanks.
saw that with Bernard, of course, as well.
Yeah, no, it does. When you're done, and that's the way, and kind of that's the way it should be. But I think that's what, that's what he's banking on. That's what James Horn is banking on. Those 4 or 5 lads. Can these lads make a difference? Have they got the legs, especially in Croke Park, to take Dublin on? And look, we'll find out on Saturday evening. But if you're looking at it in the cold light of day, it's very difficult to see anything other than a Dublin win. But I'd never write off Mayo.
What we've been seeing.
And so they're only one game away. Like we would say,
And this year
they
of all
won't
years,
respond well to pressure. They're only one game away from the whole narrative about this team changing. Like I lost 5 semi-finals before I won one, and nobody would say that about.
I know, but there's no comparison. You know, this is a very different thing. I mean, we're not seeing. Well, let's say this was Jim McGuinness's Donegal for the first time. Dublin were the other side of the draw, and we could see that Donegal team coming. We were saying, they're conceding 6-7 points. They're scoring 2-10. You know, they're rampant. Murphy's rampant. McFadden's rampant. Lacey, look at the kickouts from Durkin. He's kicking the ball 70 metres or short.
Yeah.
Look what they've got and look at their confidence and look at how they're throttling teams. This is going to be a contest. As we said before the 2014 semi-final, this is going to be fun. The prevailing emotion before this game is, Jesus, I hope Mayo can stick with them. You know, I hope Mayo can make a game of it.
Let's hope we see a game. I know. Yeah.
Because you know what the problem has been with Dublin matches is that you can be playing really well against them. I thought Cavan played really well in the first half against them. Like, the game is over. You look at the scoreboard and you're like, you know,
even
the scoreboard is ticking over all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're saying to yourself, God, Conor Callaghan hasn't been in the game much. You know, and then Paul Mannion comes on, Brian Howard comes on.
Yeah, and this is something I was thinking about earlier on. There's probably a couple of guys with points to prove in that Dublin team as well. Con has probably played in the shadows a little bit this year of Kieran Kilkenny, probably even
doesn't care.
mate Sean Bugler.
But he doesn't care.
He doesn't care, but he'll still want to prove a point in an All-Ireland final.
Deep down,
He'll
if you're
still
Conor
play.
Callaghan,
Yeah, he will. He'll still play within the framework of the team, but he'll want to show a little bit more. And by his own high standards, he has been quiet.
have you not
But
seen that
nobody-
creeping in then? Like the points that you alluded to, Joe, the likes of Niall Scully being annoyed, like.
When it creeps in, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You can, like I see it straight away. When somebody makes any mistake, that's from a, I wouldn't call it selfish, but when they do something that's not within the framework of the way the team wants to play, it sticks out to me like. It just sticks out to me like a sore thumb, and that gets noticed. You can be sure that gets brought up in the chat the following week. What story here? No, not again. Next time you do that.
I mean, I think we've got the clip of the goal against Cavan.
We do indeed. Yeah.
5 minutes to go. Game's over.
Yeah.
And Raymond Gallagher, whose kickouts were excellent all day, excellent. He kept fighting this.
We can have a look at it here, Joe.
Yeah. So he kept fighting that pocket, but Dublin are on to him. So there's Fitzsimmons has come up. Look at the ferocity of this, but also the cleverness of it, and the skills. Fitzsimmons flicks it up, a perfect fist pass, and watch Dean McDaid, who was involved in the initial tackle.
Just palms it in.
And that's the problem. You know, that's the ever-present threat, and it can happen at any moment. I mean, I come back to the point, Tyrone were winning 5-1, and within the space of 8 minutes, it was 2-6 to 5 points, and the game was over. You know, you say, what the hell happened out there?
Yeah.
We were doing well. Yeah. You know, we were holding it together. We were achieving the things that we talked about. You know, and it's all very well saying, look, there's 13 debutants. you know, and the team's fresh and playing entertaining football, which they are.
Yeah.
They have a lot of very good footballers, lovely footballers, entertaining to watch, you know. But whenever you're coming up against a Dublin team that are so seasoned, and where you were there whenever Meath played Dublin in the league, we were at it.
Yeah.
We're doing it. And it was the first match after the lockdown. So there was no crowd there. Parnell Park was empty. Myself and Mark O'Shea were there, and we were just going, it's unbelievable. The communication.
Yeah, the talk, yeah.
I mean, Brian Fenton saying, hold it, Davey, hold it. No. Boom, up at his shoulder there, he gives it to him now. And they're all talking like this all the time. Pedal, back pedal behind you, Kieran, pick him up. Kieran Kilkenny dropping off to pick up Johnny Cooper's man, because Johnny Cooper's tired and he is attacked. And all the time, this is constant communication.
And that's,
you know, and they've narrowed this down now.
That's an understanding that's 10 years in the making. That doesn't happen in a month or two. And new guys coming into a team, they need to adapt to that really quickly. And if you see my uncle, Sean Bugler, as I said, like, he's slotted in there he's such a fantastic footballer, finisher, but he's just slotted in. If anything, for me, he's not taken on as many opportunities as he should be, because he's just trying so hard to fit into that team framework. And just come back to that goal there, like, that's the sort of goal that's celebrated in the Dublin dressing room. Palm goals, they're the holy grail in the Dublin dressing room.
Absolutely.
Like, and right from Pat Gilroy's time through into Jason Sherlock, all he spoke about palm goals, looking for the man at the back post, and it's just a palm in. So Dean getting it there in years gone by, 10 years ago, if he
Jason wouldn't get on
take
this
his
team.
man on, Jason probably wouldn't get on this team myself. No, Jason, but those palm goals are just, that's what's special about this Dublin team. It looks so simple, but in reality, it's not simple, and that's
it's like
that's the 67th minute of the game. They've got to be tired. They've worked very, very hard throughout the game.
Game's over.
And yet the concentration. You know, and as I've got older and I've thought more and more about the game, and I've had a succession of underage teams, you know, I mean, I'm getting as bad as me. We've lost 3 minor finals in a row now at my own club. But
You're coming.
The more you think about the game, and the more you're working with players, the more you realise it's about the concentration. That's the most important element. You know, once you've got the other things right, your kick-out strategies, you have 5 or 6 different kick-outs, you know, you've got your forward movement, how to break the blanket, all those sorts of things. Once you've worked on all those things, it's about the concentration. Because it comes down to those small moments. You know, and when you watch Dublin, I mean, I marvelled at them in their first game in the Leinster Championship. That was against Westmeath. It was a dirty old day, but it was the crispness of their skills. You know, at one stage a ball came scootering along the ground to Con O'Callaghan, and he picked it up first day. You know, Scully the same. You know, their skills. They're not, you know, as you say, you know, you're watching other teams and they're just ordinary good teams and they're making a load of mistakes. But if you see Dublin make a mistake, you go, jeez. Yeah.
Well, when you see Mick Fitz flicking the ball up there, you're like, this is a man, he wouldn't mind me saying, who could hardly solo in 2010, and now he's flicking it up.
Yeah, but what a bit of stuff he is. He's
a fantastic footballer,
his pace. Pat Gilroy always
and he's
said,
he's 10 years on from, he made his debut in 2010, he's 10 years on now, and he's still as trim.
Such a man.
I mean, he spent a lot of time on the bench as well. And I have to say that I know that they're very dominant, but I get a huge kick from them, and I get always there's so much to admire, and you know, so much entertainment with what they do, and there's always the moment like that Cavan goal where you go, get the hell out of here. That's how you do it. And you know, they're also quite prepared. I mean, Con O'Callaghan's quite prepared to take on the spectacular goal. Kevin McMenamin has scored many spectacular goals. I mean, you'll look back in this Dublin team and you'll say, yeah, we'll never see that again, which we won't. You know,
so it is a golden era.
It's not because of some dull, systematic approach to victory, you know, which is sort of nihilistic and cynical. You know, it's because, you know, it's been such a celebration of football watching them.
Well, that gets into, I suppose, the wider discussion that it's very split down the middle of, is this a once in a generation team?
Yeah, of course it is.
But
I mean, obviously Dublin's got advantages.
It's the opposite side of that then. Yourself, Alan, Bernard, Paul Flynn, Jeremy Connolly, Ger Brennan, Kevin Nolan, lads who have stepped away, and then you have the likes of Sean Bugler coming in. Robbie McDade has just slotted in for Jack McCaffrey. He gets man of the match. So this is a once in a generation team that has gone on for a decade now.
But the spine of the team. I mean, and don't forget, I mean, it was a bit like the great Celtics team under Bill Russell, who himself was very quiet, didn't speak to the media, was hostile towards the media, was only interested in the team. I think what he said was, you know, my ego demands from myself the success of my team. You know, it's a bit like Pat Gilroy sent me his mission statement about the Dubs, and I've says it's a hugely enjoyable document. And rule one is, you must be willing to sacrifice your own game for the team. If you're not, find another pastime. I think you must be happy to sacrifice yourself for the good of the team. If you're not, find another pastime. You know.
But that conveyor belt, how difficult is it then for, when you were playing, even Alan, some of the younger guys that were coming through, to get switched on and adapt to that mindset? Is that a difficult transition for them? Because, well, I suppose we use Sean Bugler, Robbie McDade as examples, that obviously there are players there to step up, but does it take some time to naturally progress into that?
Yeah, of course it does. Things that, like probably particularly with that team, because you're not getting in straight out of a minor, straight out of an under-20 team even. You need to kind of do a little apprenticeship for a couple of years, for want of a better word. And guys are happy to do that when they're coming into a winning team like this team. It's obviously enjoyable to be around. You're competing in Ireland semi-finals or Ireland finals, but like, I've no doubt that will change, and they will be beaten. They mightn't be beaten on Saturday, but there's no doubt they will be beaten. They mightn't be beaten Saturday, but they will be beaten over the next few years. And
I thought Kerry were building towards
it forever.
That was a disaster for Kerry this year.
It was a disaster, and it was a disaster
like
for
a real
the
disaster.
It was a disaster for the championship that Kerry were beaten, I think, because I thought they were the one team that were really coming.
And they understood
they're probably
the
a bit
Dubs,
further.
and they've got a winning mentality in Kerry, and
well, I suppose they have the history.
They've got those sorts of things. See, if you think about the Mayo team this Saturday, you have a lot of really very good young players, but they'll be coming into this game with so many distractions in their mind. You know, I hope I'm going to perform well. You know, am I good enough to play at this level? You know, I hope we're able to stay with Dublin in the first quarter. So you take a really good young player like Tommy, playing at left corner forward for them, really skilled, two-footed, appetite for goals, wants to play, very good team player, and set up the first goal against Tip. Really good
He's
player.
got 2-7 this year as
so
well.
He's thinking to himself when he goes out there, you know, geez, I hope I can make an impact here. You know, I hope I'm ready. There's so many other things on his mind. He's not been here before. He's not experienced. He's not had the Dublin experience. You know, and there's so many distractions for these young fellas. Dublin, it's just a clear-sighted thing of, okay, we know what we're doing. It doesn't even have to be spoken, but our standards must be at the highest level, and we must, for 75 minutes now, you know, play ruthlessly and with composure. They don't have to worry about the game plan. They don't have to worry about Stephen Cluxon. They don't have to worry whether Con O'Callaghan will perform or whether Dean Rock will kick the frees. I mean, also you've got the greatest free taker that's ever played the game, you know, playing for the Dubs now. You know, so you add all those things together and you say, well,
the other side
how feasible is it that Mayo could beat them?
Joe, the other side of that is that those young guys don't necessarily carry the same baggage as some of the older guys on the Mayo team do. So what if Tommy starts off well, like you can't beat the confidence of a young man, of a 20-year-old, 21-year-old.
Well, it's not as if to say the Dubs leave themselves hugely exposed at the back. So let's say Mick Fitzsimons picks up Tommy. Just let's say. So he's bigger than Tommy. He's very confident, great positional sense, very good in the air.
I've seen Mick in trouble in Croke Park.
Yeah, you saw him in trouble against David Clifford.
Yeah.
David Clifford, 6'4". You know, probably he may well go on to be the greatest footballer that ever played the game. I mean, there's nothing the kid can't do. He's not really markable. But you watch the way Dublin handled him. Say, like, okay, he's going to score 4 points anyway. There's no point in getting hung up about it.
Yeah,
if he scores 4 points, he scores 4 points. Fair play to him, well done. And he did that. He played very well in both games. So young Tommy gets the ball. He takes off along the end line. Fitzsimmons does his thing, shepherds him. The sweeper comes in. Whoever's double marking him, he's turned over, dispossessed. That's the first step mentally. Jesus, this is something new. He feels their power. He feels their power at first hand. I don't think any of this is being overstated, you know, and I don't think any of this is a criticism of Mayo. I think it's just reality. I think that the chance to catch them was last year in the drawing game. The pressure of the 5 in a row, the immortality thing, like it has to seep in. And yet, when they were 3 down and staring down the barrel, all right, boys, enough's enough. You know, You know, that's the end of that. And Dublin controlled the rest of the game, and Dean Ruck missed the free that actually would have won it. And then I thought they coasted the replay really brilliantly with style. So I think the task is beyond them. I don't see any evidence that you could say, look, you know, they can win this game.
But in terms of distractions and preparation, I know that they might be distracted on the pitch. You're saying that they don't have that Dublin experience, but they won't have to deal with a big ticket rush. They won't have friends, families, partners getting onto them, hounding them for tickets. They won't have anyone at training being into them. They're in their own little bubble. Like James Horn again kind of referenced it, doing media, that they go to training, they come home, it's just like any other December. I'm sure as the final approaches,
Well, that's
it will
helpful.
change.
That's probably helpful.
But like,
it
how
probably is
big a
helpful,
benefit will that be?
But
Or is it?
you can look at the other side. It's going to be a long week sitting at home in Mayo or sitting in Dublin waiting for this game to start. Hardly able to go outside your door sometimes.
Did you know that the Mayo team, this was in Radio Midwest yesterday, I strongly recommend it.
Midwest?
Yeah, no matter what you ring up and request, they'll read it out. It's like Ron Burgundy. That's not a joke. But the Mayo players are coming down on the train on Saturday morning and back up home on the Saturday evening on the train. Now the train's about 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know, their 2 carriages are being left for them. So I just wondered what you thought of that as...
Well, it worked for the Limerick hurlers. Limerick hurlers got the train up.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot quicker from there.
It's a lot
Shorter,
quicker,
I
yeah.
suppose,
It's a long trip on Saturday morning now to be. If I didn't know that, but if I was preparing for that match, I think I'd rather be here on the Saturday night.
It's nice for the Dubs like to be in their own bed. Like Mrs. Mannion said to me last year after the final, we were all over in Mulligan's, and Mrs. Mannion said to me just after I'd been sacked. Mrs.
That's all a whole different show, Joe.
Mrs. Mannion said to me, she says, Paul came in this morning. He came down this morning and he says, Di, he says, me stud's broken my boot. He says, do we have a spare stud in the house? You know, he's just getting up out of his bed and in his own bed in the morning.
Yeah, maybe that's the way he's looking at it. He's thinking the lads
relaxed. You know, his dad has to run off and find a stud somewhere. You know,
lads can stay in their own beds. The only time we stayed, I probably told the story before. The only time Pat Gilroy's first year, 2010, he decided for the first round of the championship might get the lads away from home, so we actually stayed in the infamous Regency Hotel the night before the first round of the Leinster Championship, and it was James McCarthy's first year. I was put rooming with James McCarthy. The two of us went up to, and look, all due respect to the Regency, it was a decent 3-star hotel at the time, I think. And
4-star now, the Bonington.
4-star now, sorry, yeah. And went upstairs with James, said, James, I can't sleep. So I actually went home into my own bed and I came back for the breakfast the following morning with the team. It was just so alien to me to stay away from home the night before a match. So maybe that's the thinking behind it. Let the guys stay in their own beds.
Oh, it's a big advantage.
In their own homes.
The Kilkenny boys always stay at home in their own beds.
3.5 hours is a long train trip up though, but look, I suppose it is a challenge. I mean,
what you would want is, you see, let's look at Cavan. Mayo a better team than Cavan. They're better footballers than Cavan. But you think of the Cavan boys, they would have been saying, right, what we want to achieve after 15 minutes, at the first water break, we want to be neck and neck with them. And we want them to know that we're serious about this. You know, we want to have neutralised the key parts of their game, and we want to have prevented a goal being scored. And they come to the first water break and they've achieved all of that. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. Dublin's just, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the scoreboard and it's sort of divorced from the contest, because the contest, David Hickey says a very funny thing about this Dublin team. The great David Hickey, as you know, who won, I think he was the youngest player ever to play for the Dublin seniors. They played for like 14 or 15 years. A most marvellous human being. Anyway, he said to me, old boy, you know, he does all that, so dear boy, he says, old boy, he says, you know, when I played for Dublin, he said, I never once got a pass. He said, the best one could hope for was a 50-50 ball. He says, nowadays, Cluxton kicks the ball out and then Dublin get a score. No.
Just so regimented.
Nobody gets their hands on the ball. You know, Cluxton kicks the ball out. Well, you know, it's virtually impossible. I think they lost one kick out against Cavan. You know, no one touches the ball and then it's the Dublin score. It's almost like playing against invisible men. You're just like, fuck. You know,
Dave was of the opinion that no one can come close to Dublin like when he got involved with.
He thinks 10 in a row.
Yeah, when he got involved the early years, if we were lacking any self-belief, 5 minutes with Dave Hickey, and that was all changed because he gave nobody a chance against us. Like, we were the greatest 20 footballers, 25 footballers that ever took to Croke Park. He was great for the. He's great for the confidence.
Also, and for a man who's, one of the great humanitarians and a man of absolute integrity. You want to hear him talking about Dublin's opposition. I mean, it's scandalous the way he describes them. I mean, it's absolutely scandalous, isn't it?
How so?
No, I wouldn't say it. If you want to hear him talking about opposing teams and opposing players and all that, for a man whose life has been dedicated to the preservation
to helping
of life,
people,
But that 6 in a row, I suppose, if we bring it back to that discussion, Joe, you mentioned earlier that I suppose 6 in a row doesn't matter to people. You mentioned 10 in a row there that some people might have their eyes on. From a Dublin point of view, though, Alan, what would a 6 in a row mean? And also, do you fear that over the course of the next few years, you might see a few players go the way of Jack McCaffrey, possibly, that they just run out of energy and they run out of just not desire, but run out of that want? With
respect, I don't think the 6 in a row really means anything to this Dublin team this weekend.
Exactly.
Like, it certainly wouldn't be mentioned in the dressing room. Or the 5 in a row.
That was the big one.
We tried to play it down, but that was probably the big one. Now it's just about playing the game. Particularly this year, I think it's just about playing the games. Each game as it comes, and we probably knew they'd find themselves back in an All-Ireland final again. And just, I suppose, coming back to Jack, he obviously spoke last week about it. There's no doubt we'll see fellas step away, and it's a huge commitment. And like, for lads to do that, to get to semi-finals or Ireland finals 7-8 years in a row, whatever, like, it will take its toll.
with it, and they clearly enjoy it. And if you had someone like Sean Bugler going to play for Mayo, well, he'd have to do a load of different things. But with this Dublin team, you slot in and you do your job. Dean Rock, for example, you'll see him every game. He's just jockeying for position on that left side with his right foot to loop around and pop it over the bar, and he's eternally doing that. Kieran Kilkenny, Con O'Callaghan, they don't miss their shooting from the right areas. Everything's thought through and plotted through, and as you say, it's been done for so long now that it jars you if you see them not doing it. And now they're sort of in a situation where they're maybe scoring 124, 223. They're hurling scores, and they're not conceding any goals. Yeah, really, they're hurling scores.
Yeah, like their aggregate score is 690 to 39 points so far in this championship, Dublin. It's scary, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that, I do think because of the nature of the championship that, in the early stages of a team's ascendancy like Dublin, they could have been caught, and they almost were caught on 2 or 3 occasions. But almost, there's a gulf between almost and actually doing it. A huge gulf. I mean, I can tell you, we played in one All-Ireland final. The difference between winning that and losing that, I think we beat Cork by 4 points. But if you had lost that game, I can only imagine how you might feel about that. But to lose serially the way Mayo have, it takes the bottom out of you, and you're like, what is it that they've got that's new, that can turn this around?
Well, a couple of new faces.
Yes, I know you're saying that. What are you expecting them to do that David Clifford couldn't do last year?
Yeah, look, we said in the cold light of day, it's hard to argue against Dublin, but James Horan has gone with the younger guys, so that's what he's putting his faith in, those 4 or 5 guys, and making the difference. As I said, we know what we're going to get from Killian.
Because a lot of the older guys are just gone. They're not. They're the wrong age, they're the wrong side of 30. Yeah,
and I think it'd be fair to me. They've showed a remarkable will to get back here again this year. Like, I would have thought after last year, like the likes of Higgins, the likes of Donny Vaughan, the likes of Colin Boyle, these guys were coming towards the end of the road.
I think that's overstated. I mean, if you're living in Mayo, football is, football's what it is, and it's brilliant, and it's a very, very vibrant footballing county. Everybody wants to play football. And another good thing about the Mayo boys, whether it was Holmes and Kennelly, Rochford or Horan, they're never overtrained. They're not in these 6-day-a-week training regimes or anything like it. They have a good work-life balance. And you'll see they always come to Croke Park very fresh. So it's very enjoyable to play for Mayo. And you know, if you're in Mayo playing for the senior team, you get special treatment everywhere. I mean, you're looked up to, and you know, you've got a very special place in the affections of Mayo people. So I don't think, you know, that your point about great will to get here, and you know, that the huge sacrifice that it took to get here. You know, they beat Leitrim, they beat Roscommon, who are a very mediocre Roscommon team, you know, and they just about scraped past Galway, who I thought were unbelievably poor,
yeah.
like as if they'd just met that week. And so, you know, I think that can be overstated. Against Tipperary, really, they were all over the place. 10 goal chances, 3 conceded, 3 in the first 10 minutes. Sure, I mean, they knocked off a Division 3 team by knocking off their kick out, but I think you're overstating it to say they've shown tremendous.
So Joe's giving Mayo absolutely no chance.
Well, that leads me perfectly.
I just don't like the old damning with faint praise. You know, they're like, oh, yeah, they have a lot of heroes there. You know, they have a lot of, you know.
Like in an All-Ireland final, knowing what I know about Mayo and the players they have, and as I said, like they mightn't be good enough to beat Dublin. They probably won't be good enough to beat Dublin, but I know the players they have from playing against them over the years, coming back, like it's not easy to reach 9, no matter what county you're from, to reach 9 semi-finals. Like that's a fair feat. They have a manager that's come back in a second. It's very difficult to come back in a second time. So they have a manager they believe in. There's no doubt about that. So they have stuff in their favour. They have some new guys in there that are going to need to really play well on the day to have any chance. Is that enough? Probably not. But it's enough. But it's enough to give us a good game.
They have some boys with fire. Owen McLaughlin.
Let's see him at Croke Park.
Oisin Mullen, great athlete. The Aussie Rules boys are all over him, and you know, Keegan, etc. They have some boys with the right fire and the right.
But they haven't had anyone
spirit.
like McLaughlin in a good few years. Maybe Lee Keegan, but he spent most of his last few games against Dublin preoccupied with Dermot Connolly. So now they have a guy that has
a bit of freedom.
If he gets a bit of freedom,
and
he has serious
Callahan
pace.
Absolutely destroyed him last year, but of course he was out of position at cornerback Lee. Now, Lee's tough. And if you in club football in Mayo, you put him on some guy, I mean, he's just a torture match, you know, because he's a purveyor of the dark arts and he's brilliant at it. And he's got that brilliant sort of, all those guys, like I remember playing with Kieran McKeever, who's got that sort of dual personality. It's almost schizophrenic. You know, you'd say, God, there's the nicest lad you would ever meet. The same with Lee, and you do need that. You need your Philly McMahons and you need that sort of thing. But the problem for me is that there are not enough Mayo players who've got that deep competitive instinct.
Okay, well listen, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure for the past hour. I was going to ask you for predictions, but I think it's fair to say over the course of our discussion, it's fairly obvious that you are going for Dublin. But if I was to push you on a scoreline, will it be again a close 1-point game, an entertaining game?
I don't think so. I think Dublin just, like, kind of despite what I talk about there, I think Dublin will still win the game. I think it'll be a close enough game. I think Dublin will probably pull away at the end, and by Dublin by 6.
Dublin by 6, Joe?
I hope that it stays under 10. You know, I think that I don't want to see an obliteration. I think that if you get publicly humiliated in an All-Ireland final, the way Waterford Hurlers just have been, there's no way back from that. It's personally very demoralising. It's very demoralising for the county. You know, it's very demoralising for all the work that's been done in the county. So I don't want to see that. You know, I'd like to see Dublin malfunctioning, being a wee bit off the pace. Dean Rock missing frees that he would usually score. You know, but it's very difficult to see it because they're becoming less nerveless, and you know, more the complete Gaelic football team. I suspect that it will be a destruction. That's what I suspect.
Okay.
On all available evidence.
Okay,
you know?
well, certainly will be interesting to see what happens. If that doesn't whet the appetite for the 2020 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship final, I don't know what will. My thanks, Alan Brogan, my thanks to Joe Brolly, and my thanks to you for watching. From all of us here at Air Sport, it's bye for now.